Your roads, your voice. A town hall meeting on the future of Michigan roads. Live from Saginaw Valley State University. Here's TV5's Sam Merrill and WSGW's Art Lewis.
And good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. That is both to our studio audience here on the campus of SVSU and to those of you watching at home right now on My5 and listening to us on WSGW Radio. My name is Sam Merrill.
And I'm Art Lewis, and I welcome you too. You know, I think if you ask most people in Michigan, they would tell you that what we're doing with the roads right now is not fixing the problem. The lawmakers behind Proposal 1 say this bill will fix the roads. The opponents say it's the wrong way to go about it. We have experts here from both sides tonight, and we'll introduce you to them now.
And let's begin with those in favor of Proposal 1. Over here to my right, we have the longtime Bay County executive, and before that, former state representative, Tom Hickner. Let's hear it for Tom. And to his right, from the group Safe Roads Yes, David Waymeyer. David, welcome.
Glad to be here. Thank you so much.
Just so you know, Safe Roads Yes is the group that has been put together to campaign for, to run ads for, to in general support the ballot proposal number 1.
And opposing Proposal 1, we are joined by current state representative from Midland, Michigan, Gary Glenn. Representative Glenn. And sitting next to Mr. Glenn is Paul Mitchell, the leader of a group Coalition Against Higher Taxes. Mr. Mitchell.
So we welcome our panelists tonight. We welcome you here in the audience and those of you at home. And of course, the point of any town hall is to hear from you. It's to get your input, to answer your questions. And we will be taking your questions. My colleague Andrew Keller right there will be roaming around the Malcolm Field Theater tonight, taking your questions. The instructions are these. If you have a question that you would like to ask, please fill out a card, pass it to the end of the aisle, and then you will be asked at some point to come up to the microphone at the end of the aisle to ask your question, and we certainly hope you do that.
Now, I'm sure you've heard all about Proposal 1, and one thing you hear about it is that it's a very complicated proposal. There are a lot of layers to Proposal 1. We're going to do our best tonight to peel back some of those layers, give you the best understanding possible as what this bill will do or won't do. So we're going to begin by taking a look at the first layer of Proposal 1.
And Art, the first layer, for starters, as you probably know by now, it would raise the state sales tax from 6% to 7%. And you would see that tax on practically every consumer good you purchase. However, you would no longer be paying a sales tax when you're at the pump. It would not be applicable to gasoline. Instead, you would be paying a higher gasoline tax. Now, that increased gas tax would raise the estimated $1.2 billion that lawmakers believe is needed to fix our roads. And that higher gas tax would add, according to the best guesses of those who are studying this, about 5 cents per gallon to the gasoline that you're buying right now. And with that, let's turn to our first question of the evening. It is for Bay County Executive Tom Hickner. And Tom, you're in favor of Proposal 1. You are in your position as the Bay County Executive. One of the things in your purview is roads, the Road Commission. Why do you think Proposal 1 is the best approach to tackling Michigan's very serious problem with roads and infrastructure generally?
Well, because it raises money. We are spending less today in gas taxes than we have in years past. I think everybody recognizes that the condition of the roads are deplorable, and this is the best chance we have. It is a bipartisan proposal that passed, got onto the ballot with both Democrats and Republicans. It is complicated, but it addresses what the core issue is, which is fixing the roads.
Sam, if I could just weigh in just a little bit. It's complicated kind of because the way we do it things now is complicated. And what's really interesting is when we're finished with this, if it's approved, actually our way we pay for roads will be much simpler. And so if that's one of our goals, to simplify the situation. Again, as you mentioned, no longer will we have a system where we pay some gas tax at the pump and then some sales tax, and you're never really sure where it's going to go. This is one of the guarantees in this proposal. Every penny you pay at the pump will be going to fix our roads and for our transportation systems in our state. That's pretty simple, and that's a nice way to try to simplify the situation and deal with some of the complications drawn into over the years as we've kind of moved through and added different layers of government on top of things. This will be simple, in fact.
Hey,
Let's hear
Sam,
what our opponents of the measure have to say. We'll start with Representative Glenn, because Representative Glenn, you're a Republican in the State House, but the bill has the backing of what many would assume is the most influential Republican in the state, the governor. You probably would agree the roads need fixing.
Yes.
You just don't like the bill. So what is there about this that you disagree with the governor on?
Well, it's a 16% increase in the sales tax. Going from 6 to 7 cents is a 16% increase overall. A $2 billion a year increase in taxes, which is the biggest tax increase in Michigan in the last half century. And I think most voters would start out inclined to vote no on raising our taxes by $2 billion a year. And the polling indicates that the more people find out about Proposal 1, the more likely they are to vote no. Up to half of the money that will be raised if we vote in favor of raising our taxes $2 billion a year, up to half of it won't even go to roads. I don't think anybody disagrees that we need to have our roads fixed. I've introduced, just in the past week, a verbatim version of a bill that passed the House last year with 84 votes. We had about 55 Republicans, so that means 30 Democrats voted in favor of it. It was sponsored by the Speaker of the House, Jace Bolger. It would raise $1.2 billion for roads without raising taxes. Now, one of the benefits of term limits, I acknowledge, and nobody can argue the fact, that the last legislature was unable to get this passed all the way through and signed by the governor, but term limits reshuffled the deck. We've got 1/3 of the legislative body is brand new, and I believe that after May 5th, after most Michigan voters, I believe, are going to join me in voting no, I believe we'll demonstrate that there is a plan B, probably a C, D, E, and F. It would be irresponsible for us not to have alternatives. One of the things, we're told how urgent it is to fix our roads. Everybody agrees they ought to be fixed, but is it urgent? Is it dangerous? But for waiting around on Proposal 1 that was passed sometime in December, what that meant was we've got to sit there for 5 months waiting on the chance that they might be able to persuade you to raise taxes by $2 billion a year on yourselves and every other taxpayer in the state of Michigan. I think we ought to be looking at alternatives right now. May 5th's another 2 months away. There was nothing that would stop the legislature from being able to address this right now. Given the chance between the Bolger plan, for example, that would put $1.2 billion toward road repair with no tax increase, and what's going to be on the ballot, a $2 billion a year tax increase where half of the money doesn't even go to fix our roads, I think people are going to go no.
Right.
And then
Well,
we're
now,
gonna-
wait a
Representative
minute,
Glenn,
wait a minute.
hang
Let's
on a
not
minute.
filibuster here.
Hang on a minute, Dave. Hang on a minute, okay? We want to kind of keep this in an orderly fashion here. So we'll come to Dave now. We'll go back and forth. You'll have your
Yeah,
opportunity.
you know, there
Now,
was a
just minute,
plan.
Dave. Let me ask the question first, okay?
Yeah,
Paul
There
hasn't
are a
had-
lot-
I-
all right,
I-
well, Paul, we'll come to you next.
We will, everybody will have ample opportunity to speak tonight.
There's a lot
And
of
we will-
people-
We're going to try to keep it in an orderly progression. I don't want this to turn into the Jerry Springer show,
Right.
okay?
There's a lot of people against the bill. They say that Michigan is paying enough tax. Raising the sales tax would put us in the top 5 of the country. What would you tell the taxpayer who says, enough is enough, use what you already have?
Well, so that's really the kind of the crux of the matter here. What we have right now isn't enough. You can see it every day in our roads. The proposal that is being now responsored by Representative Glenn didn't get the votes in the legislature. The reason why? Because it would force you to cut money for schools. It would force you to close hospitals in rural areas. It would raise college tuition. It causes massive cuts in state spending in other areas. The legislators weren't prepared to do that. Are you prepared to cut spending for schools? And then there was a little off-ramp that said, oh, you know what? If we don't get money in one year, then we won't fix the roads that year. So we'll just ignore the problem, kick the can a little further down the road. No, that's not the solution to Michigan's problems. In fact, what we really need to do is step up to the plate, just like we do at my house. When I need to fix my roof, I fix my roof. I figure out how to come up with the revenues, and I fix the roof. I don't just ignore the problem. And that's what this proposal would do, is fix the roof. It would finally put us on position to start moving down the road to getting safer roads. And this is the most important thing to realize. Our roads are now unsafe. You've seen the ads now by now, I hope, where you've seen pieces of concrete going through the windows of women with their daughters in the car. This is an unsafe situation. You talk to law enforcement officials all over the state, they'll tell you they can't drive like they need to get to the emergencies that they want to get to because they have to dodge potholes. We have to fix this problem, and we can't do it with Plan A, B, C, D, E, and F, all of which were tried and talked about over the last 10 years and have failed in the legislature. There is no Plan B. It's this, or you can keep the roads you want. Either way, but you just make sure you're making an informed decision. Fix the roads, or be prepared to have our roads get worse for a decade.
All right,
more.
David and Mr. Mitchell, I know you were supposed to be next. We have to go to the crowd and then a break, but you will be first. You're on deck, if you will.
Thank you, sir.
Andrew Keller, our colleague in the audience tonight, has a person with a question. Please go ahead.
That's right. This is Dr. Nancy French from Saginaw Township with this question.
Thank you. I lived in Texas for 25 years where there's no state income tax. So I'm wondering what consideration has been made for Michigan discontinuing the state income tax in favor of this increase in sales tax.
Well, the reason why Texas doesn't have an income tax is because they generate a lot of money in oil revenues.
I haven't heard that considered in this legislature. I don't know if it has been in the past, but this is a new legislature. We've been in office now for only 2 months. And so obviously I disagree with Mr. Waymeyer. I think we will demonstrate that there are alternatives because it would be irresponsible not to have alternatives. If what he said was true about how it would impact schools and hospitals, do you really think 55 Republicans and 30 Democrats in the House would have voted in favor of it last year? The Senate Majority Leader last year didn't allow it to come up for a vote in the Senate. We've got a different Senate Majority Leader. You've got 1/3 of the legislature are new folks. Give us a chance to take a crack at it. We'll obviously get that chance on May 6th if voters join me in voting no on this $2 billion
Representative
a
Clem,
year
Representative
tax
Clem,
increase.
sorry to interrupt, but we're going to have to ask you guys to kind of keep it to the focus of the question that is asked. We have a lot of topics to get to tonight. This is a multifaceted proposal. We'd like to tackle them all, and I know that the two of you would like to have at it over that one particular element again, and maybe we'll have a chance to do that later. But right now, we're going to take a quick break, and as we do, I want to remind you the roads aren't the only thing that stand to benefit, as you've heard a little bit of tonight. That part of the story and more when we come back.
Welcome back to TV5 and WSGW's Town Hall meeting on Proposal 1. When we left, we promised Mr. Mitchell his turn, so Sam?
Yeah, Mr. Mitchell, the question that we were going to ask you previously, we kind of ran out of time in that first block. The gas tax hasn't been raised in 20 years. Don't you have to do something about that if you want to adequately address the state of Michigan's roads?
Well, I think the road issue is a little different that's being typified. There's $2 billion being raised through this tax increase, 4 separate impacts on taxes, of which the best they hope to spend is between $1.2 and $1.3 billion in the roads. They don't want to talk about the other $700 million going various sundry other places. It's kind of hidden underneath the curtain and just don't look. The reality is, Mr. Waymeyer and the Yes campaign talks about guarantees. There's no guarantee of $1.3 billion going to the roads. It's a promise. It's a promise through 2 House bills that are part of this package of a joint proposal and 10 bills. We promise we'll spend $1.3 billion. My comment to the folks in the audience, with all due respect to my buddy here, is we've seen legislators change their opinion before. We've seen changes in the legislature. We are making a commitment to spend $2 billion, to tax ourselves for $2 billion on the hope that they won't change their mind someday in the future and less will be spent. If we guarantee money to the roads, let's talk about that and not everything else. And the bill shouldn't be $2 billion when they hope to spend $1.2 billion. Explain that.
Mr. Mitchell, thank you. Now, we've talked about this bill raising $1.3 billion for roads transportation, but actually none of that money is coming from the 1% increase in the sales tax.
Proposal 1 will instead earmark that added sales tax revenue for other things, $290 million, for example, for the schools, $90 million for local governments, $130 million for public transportation, and $172 million would go back into the state's general fund. Here to talk about the education element of all of this is David Krim. He's with the Michigan Association tonight and in our audience tonight. you're obviously in favor of the proposal, but if this is about fixing the roads, why are schools getting $290 million?
Thanks, Sam. I think the answer to that is what's happened to school funding over the last 10 years. Currently, there are over 50 districts in deficit across the state, the highest in history. So the Michigan Education Association supports this proposal because it does add revenue to public schools, approximately $300 million. It also has a number of other pieces that came with the compromise, the earned income tax credit for the working poor, revenue sharing for local governments to provide police and fire. So this compromise came about with schools and those other groups because there was funding. The proposal that was out there cut school funding and it couldn't get through the legislature. It was a devastating cut to schools. They wanted to fill potholes by cutting education funding. As Representative Glenn's proposal has been discussed earlier, that will come back to haunt us if Proposal 1 fails. The fallback plan is to cut school funding to repair our roads. That's simply not acceptable. If people don't trust the legislature, and if you polled a number of people here in the audience, I don't think you would find 5% that trust the legislature, then they should vote yes for Proposal 1, take it out of their hands, and allow the funding to flow into the road repair and to schools, low-income, working poor, and local governments, as Mr. Hickner represents.
Sam?
All right, so the MEA says the bill is crucial to Michigan education. It's hard to argue there aren't struggling school districts. I think we all know that. Mr. Mitchell, why do you think the schools should be left out of the proposal?
The issue of funding the schools or any of the other things that are in the bill are distinct items that should be discussed and debated on their merits, not at midnight, slipped into the plan under cover of darkness. I went to Michigan State, but I'll admit that Bo Schembecker was right about one thing, which is nothing good happens after midnight, okay? That's reality. The suggestion here is the same as Mr. Waymeyer makes, that, well, if you fix the roof, well, in this example is we can't fix the roof, so we're going to go and ask our boss for more money. That's what they're doing. So we're saying, well, we have school districts in trouble, there's 50 in deficit, and we should just pay more taxes. We've got an example here in Saginaw that we can't get the Saginaw schools to combine 2 high schools, and even if they do, they'll be at 50% of capacity, but they can't agree to do it. The issue is not whether there's enough money. Frankly, the issue is poor administration of the money and the thought that the taxpayers should just keep dipping in and paying money. That we need to deal with these on their merits separately and not just pile them all together.
Let me go back to David, because we've heard the main argument against the bill, and I'm sure you've heard this argument, is that there are just too many riders attached to it that have nothing to do with road funding. So with all this stuff attached, it's supposed to be a road funding bill. Why should we accept all this other stuff?
Well, first of all, it's important to know about 70% of the money, once it's fully implemented in 2018, will be going for roads and for the transportation systems all around the state. So it's not 40%, it's not 50% that you may have heard. It's 70% of that money. Now, let's think about how this came about. This is a balanced approach. We talk all the time about wanting our legislators, Democrats and Republicans, to work together for solutions that really move our country and our state forward. That's what this was. This was Republicans and Democrats coming together, looking at a series of problems and addressing them together, moving our state forward. That's why the governor supports it. That's why we have strong conservative leadership in the legislature, like Arlen Meekoff, the Senate Majority Leader, a strong spokesman for this. This is why we have business groups all over the state, conservative business groups like the West Michigan Policy Forum, why you have conservative groups like the Small Business Association of Michigan, all stepping up to support this because it moves our state forward in a very positive way where we have collaborated to come up with big solutions to big problems that we have in our state. The governor was reelected to move our state forward. He's done a fantastic job the first 4 years. This is a center point. This is a key piece of his next 4 years. Yet we have a small group of far-right legislators here represented today that want to throw the state to the side, throw the interest at the governor and the way we've been moving forward aside, wants to end the chances of collaborating and working together to move forward just for their own political benefit, in my view. So I think it's really important that we realize this is a great opportunity for us to move the state forward by having Republicans and Democrats come together with a series of solutions that will really fix our state in a lot of ways.
And we will, as we mentioned a little bit ago,
Surely you'll
We
let-
will make sure everybody has a chance to respond.
Apparently
We have to take a break right now. When we come back, one of the layers that we mentioned to you was public transportation gets a kickstart of $100 million. We'll talk about that when we return.
All right, welcome back. As we mentioned earlier, this is a very dense onion that we're trying to peel away layer by layer tonight. We're going to talk a little bit about public transportation and how that factors into all of this in a bit. But first, let's go to our colleague Andrew Keller in the crowd tonight with a question from one of our participants. Sir.
That's right. This is Thomas McLean. He's from Thomas Township. A question about education.
Recently, I read in the Saginaw News that over $100 million was transferred from the school aid fund to the general fund. Why should we support higher education taxes in a road funding bill?
Want to tackle it?
I-
Representative Glenn?
I don't think you should. I think you ought to vote no on this package. And we ought to talk about fixing our roads and talk about taxes and education funding as separate, freestanding, different issues. I note that the National Federation of
But it's worth noting,
The
though,
National
that
Federation
Glenn
of
did
Independent
vote to take that
Business,
$100 million
the
away from
National,
David, let's hang on. I got a question for you right after this.
thank you. The National Federation of Independent Business of Michigan is against this. Again, if what Mr. Waymeyer said was true, do you really think 55 Republicans and 30 Democrats would have voted for the Bolger bill last year that would allow us to fix our roads without raising taxes, which according to the House Fiscal Agency would result in an additional $1 billion for schools over the next decade, and in fact had a hold harmless clause that said it's not possible under this bill for our schools to get anything less one year than they had the year before. And the gentleman from the MEA talked about, he used the term compromise. Well, think about this, folks. The House passed a plan that did not raise taxes at all. The Senate passed a plan that would have raised $1.2 billion in taxes. And then overnight in the lame duck session, they came up with a compromise that raises taxes $2 billion. Isn't a compromise usually between 0 and 1.2 billion? Instead, we have double the tax increase that was evident even in the Senate passed plan. Give us a chance. We'll prove that we can fix our roads without raising taxes. We'll have to do that or not be responsible in the offices we hold after May 6th. On May 6th and thereafter, after people, I believe, will vote no on this $2 billion a year tax increase.
Gentlemen over here on the yes side, for lack of a better term, I have a question for you. What about this notion that I think was put forward by a member of the audience, and I've heard it repeatedly over the past few weeks, that the best way to go about this would have been, you want to fix roads? Okay, let us vote on roads. You want to fix schools? All right, then later we'll vote on schools. But by combining them all together, you've confused people unnecessarily. I hear that in so many emails and phone calls and encounters on the street that it is unnecessarily confusing, and when people are confused, they tend to vote no. What about that notion?
Well, I hear that also, Sam. But the bottom line is that the Bolger plan that passed the House last session, according to Mitch Bean, the former director of the House Fiscal Agency, would cost schools upwards of $800 million when it was fully implemented. It is a shell game to suggest that you can increase funding for transportation and not affect the other areas of the state budget, whether it be K-12 education, higher education, Medicaid payments for people in nursing homes. I spent 7 years, a total of 17 years working in Lansing, 10 years on the Taxation Committee, 4 years in the Senate Fiscal Agency, and the analysis of what is being suggested by Mr. Glenn is simply not realistic, and we will not have the issue of roads fixed by pretending that we cannot raise revenue. We are all paying less today in road taxes than we were in past years.
Sam, there's
Thank you, Tom. I mentioned earlier, before we took the break, that transportation was a part of it, and we want to get to that layer of this onion, if you will. Lance Benonimi is with the Michigan Infrastructure and Transportation Association. So Lance, first of all, I think we have to accept the fact that the majority of taxpayers don't use public transportation. So what would you tell a person sitting at home who's going to vote no on this, why they should change their mind and vote for public transportation?
Well, and I have to be honest with you, the public transit piece is really not mine. I represent the contractors that actually build our roads and bridges. I can tell you from our perspective at MITA, we have been working on this issue for 10 years. And there was solution, there was 2 solutions, there were 10 solutions. There have been dozens of solutions over the last 10 years, and the legislature has failed us. This is our last best opportunity to get roads fixed in Michigan. I don't have complete confidence in the world that the legislature will come to a compromise that can get 56 votes in the House, 20 votes in the Senate, and a governor's signature. And I think the last 10 years have proven that. I know there is a new legislature out there, but there was new legislatures 2 years ago. There was a new legislature 4 years ago. And those past legislatures were not able to get this done. And I don't believe that the next one will either.
Sam, can I comment on this question or comment, please?
I was going to ask you if you have an issue with mass transit being a part of this.
Well, a couple of comments in terms of transit. We have to recognize the Yes campaign very carefully crafts their comments that all this money going to transportation. Yes, the transportation fund. Of that transportation fund, only 79% of that money gets spent on our roads. 8.9% gets spent on bike trails. Did you know that? Think about that.
That's not true.
It is true. I've got the
8.9%
form.
doesn't go to bike
Here,
trails.
David.
That's simply untrue.
Here, David, here's the form for you. You can look at it. It's from the House Fiscal Agency. Anytime you want to read it.
8.9%.
Do I get to
doesn't go
finish?
bike
Thank you, sir.
Let's let him finish.
Detroit and Wayne County, under this plan that's put forward, will receive the same amount of funding as 70 other counties in the state. Yes, 70. If David likes, I'll give him a list of those as well. So what we have here is a serious gap. No, we have a serious road issue, and in keeping with the Transportation Association's comment, we also have a leadership issue. Frankly, if we can't fix the problem on the roads, not only do we have a road problem, we have a leadership problem. Now, I'm hopeful that the new legislature will solve it. If they don't solve it, there's been multiple groups. There's been multiple groups that have come forth with ballot proposals. They'll go forward with proposals that will be citizens' initiatives to just fix our roads, because no one is guaranteeing money to the roads. I call it the partridge in a pear tree program. That's what it is, and that's what they're trying to defend.
All right, Mr. Mitchell, thank you. Sam?
So you would vote for a ballot, Mr. Mitchell? You would vote for a ballot proposal that raised taxes if it was just for roads?
The responsibility the legislators have are threefold. I'll be brief.
Well,
I know you
no,
got time.
can
No,
you
let me
answer my
answer. I'm
question?
answering your question.
Okay.
But first is effective stewardship of the money they receive from the taxpayers. Second is making priorities. If they're unable to meet the requirements at that point in time, then we deal with a tax increase. They've failed to do 1 and 2, and they just say, give us more money. Or as Mr. Waymeyer suggests, fix my roof, I want you to pay for it, please.
Okay. I'm not sure I heard an answer to
and
my
I would
question.
not,
It wasn't an answer,
I would,
Darren.
I
There's a
would
simple
not
reason.
vote for a ballot measure that raises taxes to fix our roads, because it's not necessary to.
Okay.
The
We're
Bolger
gonna
plan.
have to stop there
Pick that up
because
after our
we've got to
break.
take a break.
Thank you for
Is
that.
it worth noting that Representative
We will
Speaker
take that
Bolger-
up as well after the break. We're going to talk about the impact on the economy, in particular small business.
And it seems Michigan businesses are split on the effects, whether it'll be good or bad. We'll tell you why. Stay with us. Welcome back to our special town hall meeting on Proposal 1 that you'll get to vote on May 5th. So far, we've talked about some agencies that will directly benefit from the passage of the proposal, but improving roads and education has other side effects, particularly on Michigan business.
And the impact, whether it's good or bad, is not something that Michigan businesses can agree on. Among the groups in favor of Proposal 1, for example, the Small Business Association of Michigan, the Detroit Regional Chamber of Commerce, but the statewide chamber, which is perhaps Michigan's leading business group, is sitting this one out. They are remaining neutral on the proposal. The National Federation of Independent Business, however, says it is in opposition to Proposal 1. So I think I know what your answer is going to be. So let me ask you why, David, or County Executive Mr. Hickner, why is this good for, let's zero in on small business to begin.
Well, I've been spending a lot of time talking to some people in the UP. You've got a lot of people who are in the trucking industry up there that are, quite frankly, very concerned about the future of the industry with their inability to come up with good roads there. Every single piece of timber that's delivered up there has to go on a road. There's not a barge there, there's not a rail system up there. They have real concerns about the ability to make sure that they can deliver their product safely to the lumberyard, and then that the lumberyard can deliver it to the mill, and that the mill can take it to all of us to be able to use. You talk to large groups that have contributed to our campaign, the auto companies and people like that, they know the importance of just-in-time service, right? We all live that here in the Saginaw area, and they need to have those roads prepared to deliver that product exactly when it's needed. It can't wait 10, 15 minutes, it can't wait an hour, it can't wait 2 days while something gets repaired. You see, just down in the Metro Detroit area recently, they're having to shore up bridges with wood until they can get them rebuilt. We have serious, serious bridge issues here. 30% of our roads in this state are in what's called poor condition. Lance can probably answer this better than I can, but what that means is that when they're in poor condition, it costs you 3 and 4 times as much to repair a road that's in poor condition as it does to go ahead and do maintenance on a road that's already in fair condition. So we are in a situation where we are in desperate straits. Businesses know how to invest. They know the importance of looking down the road more than just to the next election or to the next time the legislature meets to discuss an issue. They've got to look 5, 10 years down the road, and they're making decisions on smart investments, and they know that we need to invest in our roads.
Putting millions of dollars back into the roads, schools, cities would likely mean more jobs for construction workers, teachers, police, firemen, etc. Some people would say that putting people back to work is worth higher taxes. Mr. Mitchell, what would you say?
I think first we have to recognize, we keep talking about what happens May 6th and the impact on business. The retailers have declined to participate and endorse this proposal. The realtors have declined to endorse the proposal. Michigan auto dealers have. Let's not leave them out. The auto dealers, in fact, pay between 17 and 33% of the total sales tax paid to the state, and they've declined to endorse this at this point in time. I can't tell you what to do tomorrow. The scare tactics that are being used on this road proposal is really quite amazing. They're not going to roll the roads up on May 6th and suddenly return to dirt. No one says we don't fix the roads, as you've asked. The question is what it costs us to do that, and what no one in the Yes campaign has explained to anybody is why we have to pay an extra $700 million, what I call ransom, to fix the roads. So yes, we'll employ people fixing the roads. Why are we going to pay more to do it? And no one will explain that, Art, and that doesn't make sense to me.
Thank you, Mr. Mitchell.
Any chance I could comment?
Well, I tell you what, we're going to hit a break. There's going to be time, hopefully, for you guys to talk about this and other things. But when we come back, one of the things we haven't gotten to tonight is the impact of Proposal 1, if it passes, on local governments. We mentioned that there would be some money coming their way as a result. We'll ask Mr. Hickner about that shortly.
Thank you. Welcome back. We've been peeling back the layers, if you will, of Proposal 1. One of those layers will find money going to local governments who would receive a nice boost. So, Tom, let me ask you this. Why should taxpayers approve millions of dollars in local government funding when they simply just want to fix the roads? It seems to come back to that question over and over again.
Well, number one is because that's what the proposal is. And we either address it with this proposal or nothing gets done, because I don't believe that there are 56 votes in the House and 20 in the Senate and a governor's signature to do what the representative is suggesting. The proposal increases revenue sharing by about $100 million. Counties would not receive any of those dollars. Cities would. It's beneficial to city residents and city governments for a couple reasons. Number one, it'll help fix their roads. In the case of Bay City, the amount of revenue allocated for fixing roads increases from $2.7 million to $4.4 million. In the case of the Bay County Road Commission, it increases from $7.7 million to $12.9 million. All you have to do is drive through any street in Bay City and you'll know why we've got to fix those roads. The other aspect of it, from a financial standpoint, is that over the last decade, the amount of dollars going into city budgets has decreased from the standpoint of state revenue sharing to the tune of almost $1 billion, along with tax levels have actually gone down for city residents. You are paying less today in city taxes through property taxes than you were 5 years ago, and that's because of the values have dropped so significantly. So there is something in this proposal for cities and townships, and I think that's will be money well invested by the taxpayers.
Gentlemen, you heard the executive say that that money coming to the communities is going to go to roads. How do you feel about it?
One quick comment, then to Representative Glenn. The County Road Association of Michigan met about 2.5, 3 weeks ago. They did a poll. They asked county road commissions whether they had to have local millages. Over half of them said they did need additional local millages over and above this $2 billion, and the estimated amount was another $1 billion. Now, is there anybody in this audience or in the listening audience that doesn't have to live on a budget? We all do. Apparently, it does not apply in government. We just ask you for more money. The reality is you've got $2 billion in front of you in Proposal 1, and they're going to ask for another $1 billion in local millages for the roads. It just doesn't end unless we put an end to it.
Well, and Mr. Mitchell certainly hasn't been around Lansing for very long, and actually, I'm surprised he even lives in Michigan some days. Here's the reality. We have cut state spending and cut your taxes by billions of dollars over the last decade. What is it? That's true.
The budget's gone up every year.
You want to look at the data? I can show you the data. We have cut state spending by billions of dollars.
The budget's gone up every year the last 2, 5, and 10 years.
We have cut your level of taxation by billions of dollars. So here's the question. Do we want to invest in our future, in the future of our children, or do we not?
All right.
Well,
hold on, everybody.
Let's all take a deep breath. We're going to let Mr. Glenn address this issue, and then, as I can tell, so many of you want to get in on this, we're going to take one final break, and then that last segment will be primarily audience questions. So, Mr. Glenn, if you can keep it concise, please.
Well, if you believe what Mr. Waymeyer said, then I guess you vote yes. If you don't believe what he said, I urge you to join me in voting no on this additional $2 billion tax increase. The National Federation of Independent Business, the way they arrive at their positions is they actually poll their entire membership, their grassroots membership, and it came back overwhelmingly in opposition to this $2 billion a year tax increase. The president of the Detroit Federation of Teachers has come out and said he's against this proposal on the ballot. And the polls indicate 60 to 70% of Michigan voters are planning to vote no. Perhaps Mr. Waymeyer thinks all of those people and that percentage are right-wing, as he said. I found it coincidental that they started putting wood on bridges in Detroit the same week his organization started running ads that showed wood on bridges in Detroit. I thought that was very convenient timing.
We've got to take a break, but thank you very much. We'll be back with audience questions in just a couple of moments.
All right, welcome back, and appreciate everybody being here tonight. Appreciate you watching at home on My5 and listening on WSGW. Lots of folks with lots of questions. The intrepid Andrew Keller is with one of them right now. Drew?
That's right, and we have Jerry Cabot from Frankenmuth. Jerry, you have a question for Mr. Glenn.
Yes, either Mr. Glenn or Mr. Mitchell, one or the other. Fixing roads in Michigan definitely needs to be a priority. Tourism is a big area. I'm from Frankenmuth, and we know that we have to have decent roads in order to continue with the growth in tourism. I'm not real keen on Proposal 1 for some of the explanations that were given, primarily because of the fact of the add-ons that are in the proposal. But I really would come here to become educated a little bit more on alternatives. So either Mr. Glenn or Mr. Mitchell, if you might just explain a little bit in regard to any comprehensive alternative that we might look to address this problem.
I think the place to start is, thanks for the question, is back to what was originally before the Senate and the House last December. In my opinion, it was sort of like a lob pass at the end of a basketball game and they didn't get the dunk and went out of bounds. That doesn't mean that you simply take a bad deal, and that's what Proposal 1 is. It's a really bad deal. It costs you $700 million more to hope to get $1.2 billion for your roads. There was, as Representative Glenn says, there was a House proposal, there was a Senate proposal. The high cost in that was $1.2 billion. They went in a room for conference committee to compromise. Why did they not compromise? Instead of a compromise, or the deal we got was 58% higher. I think they go back, in my opinion, the governor gets the leadership in the Senate and the leadership in the House, the Appropriations Committee in a room, he closes the door. Good news is he's got the state police to stand outside the door, and no one leaves until he got a solution that makes sense to all of us as voters that just fixes the roads. There's no one that opposes Proposal 1 that thinks the roads are marvelous. We want them fixed as well. We just don't want to pay a ransom to do it to a whole lot of folks, and this is a bad deal.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mitchell. Drew?
Yeah, we have Dave Schmidt here from Bay City with a question and, I believe, an alternative.
Yes, I'd like to offer some alternatives to raising taxes. One thing we could do, over the decades, the DEQ has seized thousands and thousands of acres of farmland throughout Michigan. This land could be auctioned off and then put back on the tax base. In Tuscola County alone, it would generate over $200 million just on the sale, and then offer tax revenue from then on. Another item is prevailing wage. If we eliminated prevailing wage, the state would save over $224 million each year. We don't need more government. We don't need growth in government. We need to look at alternatives to raising taxes. If you look at reality, how much is a million? 1 million hours ago was 1885.
All right, let's get some response. Dave, you want to tackle that?
You know, everybody has their better idea. A, B, C, D, E, F, G. The Bolger plan, guess what? Speaker Bolger is opposed to the Bolger plan today. Speaker Bolger is supporting Proposal 1. Why? Because he knows how the system actually has to work. We made you all sit together here, all of you, and come up with a plan. Nobody would be happy with any one individual aspect of that. We can wait until the fairy dust sprinkles on the unicorns in the legislature and they all come up with Representative Glenn's solution. It's not going to happen. We've been dealing with it for 10 years. It's not going to happen. So it's pretty simple. Take Proposal 1. I think that some of the solutions that are in Proposal 1 are pretty useful. Proposal 1 has an increase in the earned income tax credit. Many people are concerned that the sales tax is regressive. Poor people pay a bigger share of it than rich people. So it addresses that. But anyway, those things can come together. This is what government is about. People coming together, common goals, getting a solution, moving forward. It's up to you.
And with that,
it's up to you.
All right.
It's up to you. You can vote yes for this, or you can keep the road you have.
And with that, let's go back to Drew for one final question.
That's right. John Wilson here from Vassar, who I believe has a question that a lot of people may have when it comes down to the bottom line.
It seems like when all you politicians are running for office, one of the big issues is cutting waste. And it seems to me we should cut some of that waste before we're asking the taxpayers like myself for more money. What's your position on cutting some of the waste first before asking us for more money?
Well, in County
Mr. Glenn? Representative Glenn?
I agree wholeheartedly with your observation, and the gentleman before you had a great point as well. He said that if we would repeal the prevailing wage law, we'd save $225 million a year. That's just on public school construction. It's a total of $400 million that we spend on public works projects. But you know, the Bolger plan, again, I'll just point out, passed the House last year with 55 Republicans, 30 Democrats. Do we really think an overwhelming majority of the House would have voted in favor of that if it did all the evil, dastardly things that have been proposed? It never got a vote in the Senate, but we have new Senate leadership. I expect that Senator Arlen Meekhoff will allow alternatives to come up on May 6th after voters vote this down, and I'm confident voters are going to vote this down.
We know what passed both the House and the Senate. What passed the House and the Senate was Proposal 1.
Let's tell you what, we're going to take another break before we spin out of control, and I want to remind the audience, please don't do that, okay? We'll escort you out if you can't abide by the rules. Thanks. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back. As we kind of put a bow on this, we tackled a lot today, but we sincerely hope that those of you who watched, those of you that were here, came away much more informed about this ballot proposal that you will face in May.
Yeah, we tried to give you as much information as possible so you could make an informed decision. We'd like to kind of recap a little bit about Proposal 1.
As you know, if it passes, the sales tax goes from 6 to 7%, and that would cover, it would raise the price of just about every consumable good. It would also raise the gas tax. But to soften the blow of that, the sales tax would no longer be applicable to gasoline. And the state estimates those higher taxes about $1.2 billion a year.
Now, it's not just roads that are going to get the help if it passes. Another $292 million will go to schools, $130 million to mass transit, another $96 million to local government, and it would also trigger a series of bills, including a rise, which we didn't get to talk about, in registration fees.
So there you have it. We want to thank you for being with us tonight and for your very astute and insightful questions. We want to thank, of course, our panelists for their patience and for abiding, by and large, by the rules that we have laid out. Thank you, gentlemen. And once again, Proposal 1 is on the ballot Tuesday, May 5th. I hope you know this. The polls open that day at 7 in the morning and they close at 8.
Please get out and vote. I mean, really, it is your responsibility. We hear a lot of complaints, but if you don't vote, should you really complain? So get out on May 5th and do it. Thank you all for coming.
Take care.
Thank you.